It's 7:07. Today is March 18th, 2015. We'll call to order this meeting of the Brattleboro Developmental Review Board. The first order of business is to review and approve. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot my introduction. So I know some of you have been to many DRB meetings and may have heard this a number of times, but for those of you who haven't, these are the opening remarks I give before every meeting in order to orient you to the procedures of this board and what we do. At the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrator decisions. Procedurally, the Development Review Board operates on the record. Broadly, this means that we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties, and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants and members of the public should be aware that as we are on the record, this is your opportunity, and perhaps your only opportunity, to comment on and provide evidence relating to an application. In the event our decision is appealed to the Environmental Court, the Environmental Court will not take or consider additional testimony at its hearing, but will look at the evidence and testimony from our hearings, the regulations and applicable law, and determine if the evidence supports the findings and the decision of this board. Only interested persons that participate in this hearing may appeal a decision made by this board, so I strongly encourage all of you to speak up at this hearing if you wish. As we're on the record, we're going to ask that you affirm that your testimony will be truthful. So if there are any applicants here or anybody who thinks that they may speak regarding an application, I'd ask that you stand and raise your right hand, and I'm going to swear you in. Okay, I think that's everybody. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give in the cause under consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury? Okay. Applicants require a majority vote of the full board to succeed. That's 4 votes out of 7. Now we have 8 people here. A couple of them are, or the 3 members to my left actually, are alternates. And in each application, 2 alternates will be appointed, so it'll be different combinations of 7 from this board. After taking testimony, the board will close the public hearing and may vote on your application. The board will issue a written decision within 45 days of the close of the hearing. While we may vote on an application, it is the written decision that controls the timeline for appeal. It should be noted that the town of Brattleboro is a party with an interest in land development applications. The town does not have a special status before this board. Documents provided to the board by the town planning department, town attorney, or other town departments will be considered in exactly the same way as information from the applicant or other interested parties. Now, the first order of business is to approve our minutes from the February 18th, 2015 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Secretary, has our meeting been properly warned?
Yes, it has.
Okay. This is the time for anybody to disclose any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications. Okay. So having that in mind, the alternates who will be appointed are as follows. For application 2015-13, which is Kelly and Sitchell, is it Sitchell or Seichel?
They've actually withdrawn.
Oh, this is the one that withdrew. Okay. Well, geez, there goes my list. All right, so let's try this again. For application 2015-14, which is Stinson, Eric Annis and Maya Hasegawa will be appointed. For application 2015-15, which is Brattleboro Savings and Loan and HJK Enterprises, George Reed Savory and Eric Annis will be appointed. And for application 2015-16, Maya Hasegawa and George Reed Savory will be appointed as alternates. That covers everything. So I suppose we should start by addressing application 2015-13. Did they want a continuance, or did they withdraw it completely?
They've withdrawn it completely.
Okay, so that's noted on the record as withdrawn. The next application is 2015-14, Tim Stinson. Mr. Stinson, the way we do this is you come sit at this table here. And that microphone there picks up what you say for the people who are watching on TV. Could you tell us a little bit about your project?
Yes, I purchased some property, a parcel on the end of Maple Street, Guilford Street Extension, and I'm looking to divide it into three building lots and go from there.
Just give me a second here, John. So there's a steep slope on that property, right?
Yes.
And I understand that one of the things you're requesting is that we now require a map with contour lines, right?
Excuse me?
I think one of the things you're requesting is that we waive the requirement for a map with contour lines.
Yes.
Would it be possible to mark the start of the slope on the map? Even if you didn't do contour lines, just simply to delineate where it is?
You mean before it flies?
Yeah. I don't mean right now.
Oh, all right. Oh, yes. yes.
I mean to have Mr. Fitzgerald or somebody else simply add something to your plan here.
All right. Yes, I can do that.
To indicate the area of the slope where it starts. Okay. And is our understanding correct that lots 1 and 2 will be developed with 3-unit dwellings? And
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And there's already a 1-unit dwelling on lot?
No, there's no dwellings
Oh,
on it.
there's no dwelling? Excuse me.
That dwelling is cut out of what was that.
Oh, excuse me. Okay.
'Cause lots 1 and 2 was going to be the 3 units, and lot 3 was going to be a 1 unit. A lot on the
okay.
corner by Maple Street by the intersection.
Okay. There's a little brook on that property, Herrick Brook.
Yes, there is.
I don't see it on the survey. Would it be possible to have that put on your survey as well?
Yes, it shows just the beginning of it, but it doesn't show how it continues through the property. But
Okay.
I can have Bill work with that.
Okay. I should have that as a condition. And is development possible on the areas of the low slope?
On the backside, no, it's not developable.
Too steep?
Yes. Yep.
And none of these structures that you propose is going to intrude into the special flood hazard area, correct?
No, it won't.
Even though some of it is on the parcel? Right?
Excuse me?
Even though some of the special flood hazard area is on the parcel, none of your structures is going to intrude into that area, correct?
No, it will not.
And they're also not going to be within 50 feet of Herrick Brook?
No, they will not.
Okay. That does it for my questions.
Are we gonna see a site plan on this?
I don't think so. Well, probably down the road.
Before he builds it.
Down, yeah, but not in connection with the subdivision.
before the corners. Okay, so that's when we see. He comes for a final subdivision.
Yeah, so that's when we see the setbacks. Okay.
Any questions from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Well, if that's all,
One hand right up here.
oh, I'm sorry. Could you come up to the microphone and, yep, that one right there. Just say who you are.
My name is Matt Ronconi, and I have adjacent property to you. I guess I'm glad I was, the lot is, there are some very steep slopes. I do feel that the contour line, seeing the contour line is important. I guess my question is, you know, it appears to me from sort of looking at it from Maple Street that really the only developable portion is the field that's currently a field. I would just question, you know, dividing that into 3 lots. I mean, in my opinion, 3 lots there seems excessive or seems a lot for that size. I know.
Even just chopping it up into 2
Yeah,
small lots.
And I, you know, I'm certainly not begrudging any Mr. Simpson's right to develop land. I just would like the contours looked at. The back portion of the property is very steep. You know, is it appropriate for 3 lots?
Right.
So yeah, I was going to comment that I felt the contour lines, you know, are important for you know, judging the lot for development.
So the minimum lot size in those districts are 6,000 and 8,000 square foot for the lots
Okay.
for the respective, either the 1 or 2 unit dwelling and then the 3 to 4 units. He's over all of the minimum lot sizes, so once you hit the minimum,
Okay.
there's really nothing we can do. Are you saying that you're not satisfied simply with the slope being marked, but you want the contour lines to see how steep it is?
Well, I guess, you know, perhaps yes, or at least whatever you feel would, you know, give you adequate judgment in that regard.
How,
You live right next to him there, don't you?
Not the greenhouse, if you're familiar with
You're
it.
just on the other side of that one, right?
Yes,
Right,
correct.
the one that's kind of like boxed into that little box into his lot. So his,
I guess, yeah.
you abut him behind that lot if we're reading this map correctly, is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
And does your property go back, looks like your property abuts the whetstone, is that correct?
correct, yep.
Does yours drop off steep like
Yeah,
that too?
yeah, yes.
So are you saying there's a pretty flat deck and then it drops off really steep down to the bank all the way along through there? You must be
Yeah, as far
familiar
as
with it
I,
too.
yeah.
Right, and so are you saying there's a question as to the steepness and that's why you need to see the contour lines?
No, well, just,
It looks, I've been driving by that street for 50 some odd years and it looks as steep now as it did 50 years ago.
oh, no. I guess my well, Mr. Valenti kind of answered it, but I was just concerned when you look at 4 point whatever acres, we're really not talking for the developable acres, but it sounds like perhaps that my question is moot if the actual field subdivision meets the requirements.
The lot sizes in is that residential there? Yeah, the lot sizes are pretty small in that
yeah.
area. At 6, if it was a 1 to 2 family, it only needs to be 6,000 square feet. And you know, that's what, about 1/8 of an acre?
Yeah.
Maybe a little less than
It's even less than that.
1/7 of an acre or something like that, so. And he's got, what, the smallest one is 1.2. I'm not sure how much of that is.
Well, I guess that would be my question when you, and perhaps it doesn't matter, but I would just say, you know, if you,
It seems like just consistent with what is visible and observed where you're at there,
Yeah.
it would seem like if you had an accurate drawing of where the edge of that field was, the edge of the flat deck, I think what you're saying is accurate, that the flat deck is pretty much the only buildable space.
Yes.
Once you go over that edge, whether it's behind you or behind him,
Yeah.
it's off a cliff for all
Yeah.
intents and purposes for building, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't it just suffice if you just had the contour line at an accurate contour line at the edge of the
I guess that would be
slope?
fine, yeah. sorry.
Then you could at least define what that buildable space was, but even still, yeah, I think the way you subdivide those lots generally is people do build, a lot of lots consist of some not so usable space with some usable space. Yours may be the same, I don't know.
Oh, well, yeah, certainly, yeah. But I guess I would just, yeah, I think not maybe all contour lines, but at least the developable portion would be helpful, and I
Yeah.
asked for that already.
Right. And Mr. Stinson, do you know, and I realize this is pretty conceptual, how far the closest building to that slope is going to be?
On the backside, it would probably, I'd say at least 100 feet.
You look like you were about to ask a question.
Yeah, how much of lot 3 is cut off by the brook?
I'm, as we discussed, I'm gonna have to have, my surveyor put some better lines there as far as where it drops off the backside. Lot 3 is the smallest, does have the smallest amount of area. But I'd have to have, with the site plan, I'll show the more detailed, surveyed map of, the buildable properties there.
Was there anything else you wanted to comment,
I
Leo?
guess this isn't my understanding, as far as the number of units that are on a property, this isn't the venue to decide that.
So when he does that, he's going to have to come back before us for site plan review. You'll be notified as an abutter in the same fashion you were for the subdivision permit. So that when that comes into focus, again, you will have another opportunity to come before us if you have some objection.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Another hand up here.
Oh, thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bruce Rosso. My brother Bob Lyons and I own the neighboring property. Tim, it's nice to meet you. And we basically came to find out, what you were thinking. And I know that, as Matthew said, it was surprising to us we've known all along that property would be developed sooner or later, or was likely to, and that's life, and that's fine. The idea that it would have 3 units on it really surprised us. It seemed out of keeping with the neighborhood, and so that was one piece just to air. And then I don't know to what extent the 3 units on that corner create congestion in terms of traffic flow and all that. I assume that's part of the process of looking at the application and what could fit there. So overall, I'm glad that you have property, and
Thank you.
hope that it's developed well. Hope that there's landscaping in there in keeping with the neighborhood and all that.
All of that.
All
of that stuff is considered when site plan review comes.
Okay. Yeah. And is the traffic piece also considered at that point?
Yes, it's
Okay,
one of the factors.
So it's just to put on record that we do have concerns that it's this piece of property, and as has been discussed, it's really the field that's available.
Right.
Would be developed in that congested of a manner, that many units, and so that's our piece.
I understand. The challenge is when he's this far above the minimum lot size, what we would be effectively creating new law specifically for this parcel, contrary to what's already on the books. So we're really just looking at the minimum lot size. If he hits the minimum lot size, perhaps the minimum lot size that was written in the ordinance is not appropriate for that area. But that's not our call to make, only to see if he makes his marks.
All right, well, I appreciate that.
Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Do you want to come up, Mr. Lyons?
Just for some clarity.
Just for the TV viewers, can you say who you are? I know most of Brattleboro knows you, but
Thanks for that. Just for some clarity on the map you're looking at, our property, the back line of our property is where that bank starts. It cuts all the way across to Maple Street. So more than half of the 3 lots seem to be embanked there in the street. And again, we appreciate, we wish you a lot of luck with it.
Yeah, thank you.
We encourage you to build, but thinking of 3 units on that space with traffic, curb cuts on a curve, freeway stop signs just down the road, it seems a little excessive. So some questions about how you would have parking for 3 and for 2, 3 units, where that would be, what kind of drive you would have. Those would all come in the next meeting, I assume?
yes, and I just want to be clear, nothing you say here is on the record for the site plan review. So even though you came and said this for subdivision, if we make a decision you disagree with and you want to appeal it, say, you have to get on the record at the right hearing, which will be the site plan review when traffic and those things
You
are.
have to come back.
I'm telling you, yes. I don't want you to think that you've got it on the record here and then later not have an opportunity to participate because you weren't on the right
So
way.
again, for clarity, this isn't the right time to ask specific questions about what is going to be developed there and how that's going to be done.
You're right, it's
Yeah.
not the right time.
Right. We don't really have authority over any of that stuff when we're just talking about subdividing a piece of land, where the lines go.
As far as curb cuts and things like that, that's also
Yep.
on the road.
We have to wait until an applicant shows us what is going to be done before we can make a judgment about what is going to be done.
The idea that you're breaking it up into 3 parcels, doesn't that imply that you're,
It only implies that there are 3 legitimate building lots,
And
not what's going on.
well, and that the permit we're giving, when we're basing the minimum lot size on the number of units that the applicant says they're going to build, if he were to change his mind and, try to build a 10-unit there, then our permit would have no force and he'd be violating. Did you raise your hand? I'm sorry.
James, as part of the analysis of the applications, we look to make sure that they can have access in conformance with the code. So these ones can have access in conformance with the code.
Right.
okay, wish you luck.
But anybody else from the public? Other board members? So if there's no other discussion or commentary, we'd hear a motion to approve application 2015-14 with the provision that the applicant has to delineate where the Herrick Brook crosses the property and where the slope is, not necessarily with accurate contour lines, but so that it is clear on the map.
So moved.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next application is Brattleboro Savings and Loan and HJK Enterprises. That's 2015-15. Hello.
Hi.
Could you tell us a little bit about your project?
Sure, thank you. We are renting space in the Black Mountain Square Shopping Center, the north end of the building. We'll be putting a new branch facility in that location. It's approximately 2,000 square feet of space.
I'm sorry, you should identify yourself.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm Dan Yates from Brattleboro Savings. And with me is Teresa Masiello, who's the head of our retail banking area. So we are putting a retail branch facility in this location. And what we're here to talk about tonight is the installation of a drive-up facility on the north side of the building. For any of you that are familiar with the building, at the northwest corner, there is a garage door that I believe was used by BRW when either they were installing hardwired car phones or other such things. And our plan is to have a small, I'll call it almost like a little bus stop jut out that will have a tube system with a two-way video for customers to pull up, use as a drive-up that'll come back further in the building. But we wanted to put it farther down that side of the building so we ensured no disruption of traffic flow out onto Black Mountain Road from that curb cut that exists on the northeast corner.
I feel kind of silly for not knowing this, but is that ATM that's in that parking lot yours?
Yes.
Do you have some idea of the traffic that is used by your customers at that current ATM?
It's probably 40 cars a day, maybe, at most.
Okay.
The unfortunate thing about that, I'm sorry.
Is that staying there that evening?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
Will this teller be manned? Or is
It'll
it
be-
gonna have just another device?
There will be, inside the bank itself, it will be manned, but it's going to be a tube that will deliver, if anybody's been at
Like
our...
the vacuum tube.
A vacuum tube, and it'll deliver the,
So there will be someone in there that's live making
Yes.
eye contact with someone like on Main Street.
Yeah,
Right.
and there's going to be a two-way interactive screen monitor, so the person can see the teller waiting on them, and the teller can see the person in
But
the
it'll only be
vehicle.
one lane.
that's correct.
What do you anticipate the traffic will be with the new operation?
In our studies, we've identified what exists in terms of deposits within the Putney Road market area between the credit unions, TD Bank, and Citizens Bank. And our hope is that we'll acquire approximately 25% to 35% of that. How that translates into actual traffic is hard to determine.
Could you
But-
take a wild guess? Are we over 100 cars a day, 200
Oh,
cars a day?
I don't think so. I think that, maybe it's going to be, certainly early on, it'll be slower and will build in time, and we hope it builds quite a bit, but I would imagine somewhere between 50 and 75 cars a day.
And that would be the hours would be the same as the main bank hours?
We'd probably open the drive up at 8 in the morning and close it at 5 in the afternoon, and then on Saturdays, likely from 8 till noon.
And so that's 8 hours a day and whatever, I didn't make the calculation, but, and you're expecting, you said 60, 75?
Perhaps as
cars?
many as 8 cars an hour.
8 cars an hour?
Yeah. Yeah, if we get 75 cars a day.
What's your experience at the main branch here at your peak hours? How many cars do you usually see queued up out there?
Saturday is a particularly busy day, and the total transaction count is probably about 150.
100 on average. Yeah, it's about 100 on average on a Saturday through 2 lanes.
Will this have Saturday hours?
Yes.
Okay.
But it will be lobby and drive-through. Right now, our main office, only the drive-through is open. So all of your traffic is being pushed through the drive-through versus lobby half and half.
Right.
This branch will be open on Saturdays, so you'll have people parking and then people driving through.
Is it going to be kind of the traditional 8 to 12 half days?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know, it seems from your plan that you have 3 lanes to stack behind the person who's at the whatever you call it, the window to shoot. Do you know if on a Saturday morning those stacking spaces are going to be adequate to accommodate the estimated traffic? Can you just tell us how you know that?
Based on the traffic pattern at the main office, that's generally what we see for stacking at a very busy branch location.
Okay.
So, assuming that this traffic level is going to be less, it should be adequate. Typically, we don't stack more than 3 at the main office. The problem there is that it narrows down, so.
Right. How long does the average transaction take?
Depends on the teller.
Ballpark.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, 2 or
It's
3
quick.
minutes?
Yeah, it's quick.
2 minutes?
Yeah, 2 or 3 minutes. I think most people are prepared when they come to the drive-up, more so than necessarily when they come into the bank to conduct their business face-to-face. So they're interested in getting in and getting out.
Okay. Are you gutting the walls or the attic of that little space?
This
Are we gutting it?
Yeah. Are you taking things apart inside, or are you just sort of refinishing it and repurposing it?
Inside, we're just refinishing it. Outside,
Okay.
we're building the structure.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Actually, in the attic area, we aren't doing anything with the exception of possibly running the tube through the rafters,
Okay.
to get it back down into the main building.
Okay. Are you doing any landscaping?
The plan that you have actually keeps the landscaping along the north end of the building, and the shed area will be going pretty much where the garage door is already. We might have to take a bush out for construction for the guys to be able to fit around and actually build the building. But our plan is, the reason that we built it the way that we did is so that we could keep the landscaping that's presently along the side of the building.
Will there be any change in the way the stormwater is managed?
No.
Okay. Is there going to be any signage proposed on this?
There will be,
structure?
yes.
Okay. And you're
Yeah,
going to
that's
come...
not part of this. We'll be back
Come
with
back for
the
that.
appropriate sign applications.
Okay.
And I think,
How
did you,
about-
did
how
you
about-
get whatever this is called? There's some annotations on there about
Is that
you know,
C1?
future signage too, but that's still,
Yes, C1.
Okay.
yeah. But we'll have a comprehensive signage plan.
We're still studying what's allowed and trying to make certain that we make the most of the square footage that's allowed to us, as well as ensuring that we have good directional signage.
I see on this plan that you submitted with us here, and aside from new business signing, there will be signing present to, signing and striping present to try and control the traffic flow to the drive-up, correct?
Yes.
So, because I've seen people, I might even done it myself, come off Black Mountain Road and just kind of come down in that way to get anything. If there's something exiting at the next one or whatever. And that's still going to be maintained as a service entrance to the rear, because when I looked at it today, it said service only straight through to the rear. So just to avoid confusion and someone trying to plow head on into someone at the drive-up, you'll have some signing at that kind of face of that.
Do not enter.
Right by the outlet there, yeah, do not
Yes.
enter. And how about signing for traffic flow and like as I think what Spoon was getting at, some sort of marking out there to indicate to someone queuing, so someone can pull in there and coming along the normal traffic pattern, coming in off Putney Road, and they'll come around this way to want to queue into the kiosk.
Mm-hmm.
And then there'll be yet a different lane of travel for people coming to queue up to get into the drive-through window? And
Right,
will
it'll-
those two set lanes be separate and striped accordingly?
It'll almost be you'll come to a point where you'll bend to the right to go to the ATM, or you'll bend to the left to approach the drive-up.
90 degrees each way?
Correct.
Right, okay, and that'll be striped to represent that?
Right, there'll be arrows and,
Gotcha.
and
But
again,
it won't be two lanes right here.
no, it won't
in
be
front
two
of the
lanes. It'll
building.
be
Okay.
one lane coming along the front of the
Right.
building and then
So
just,
they'll turn either way from there?
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
Because that's how the parking lot is
Yeah, right.
shaped to go.
Any other questions from members of the board?
Will that be replacing Chesterfield?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Yeah.
Anyone from the public like to comment on this application?
Sounds great.
Do you want to get that on the record?
I'm here to support them.
You can go on the record if you like.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a note in here from the Assistant Fire Chief indicating that you need to submit to the Division of Fire Safety for construction permit. So that's going to have to be a condition.
Right, and just to fill you in on that, our architect, who's Jeremy Colin, is working on the final construction drawings, so we hope to be able to submit those in the next few weeks.
Okay. Is there anything else I'm forgetting? No? Okay. So I'll take a motion to approve application 2015-15 with the added provision that the applicant must submit to the Vermont Division of Fire Safety for construction permit.
So moved. Did somebody get it?
I think he's got it.
Second. I got it.
A little quicker on the draw there. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all
Have a
very
nice night.
much.
Okay, the next application is 2015-16 Eli Gould for Ironwood Brand LLC.
Before you start, I came in for the development at Gilbert Street. Except for a guy, I know it's already ended. I got bad information that it would start at 7:30.
Oh,
And what my interest is
well, while you're here, why don't we take what you have to say on the record? I need to swear you. Have you been sworn in?
I have,
Okay, if you could raise your...
Right in too, while you're-
Swear in,
Eli also.
Okay, Mr. Gould, I'm gonna sneak you in here if you can stand and raise your right hand.
Yes.
Wait a second. Let's get that right hand up. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the cause under consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay. So could you state your name?
Tim Ellis.
And you understand, Mr. Ellis, I'm sorry that you got bad information, but we did already approve that application. I'm choosing to let you get on the record here, but I'm not sure how an appeal court might treat it.
Right. They just, I got a letter from my neighbor saying that I was at 7:30, so I would have been here. But regardless, that's the situation.
Yeah.
And so I'm even here just because I want to, it says here that any participation in local proceedings is a prerequisite for the right to take any subsequent appeal. So if anything else happens, I want to say that I was here at some point.
Yep,
Late
that-
anyway, yeah.
Totally fine.
And my interest is I live up the street at 120 Gilbert Street. And from what I understand, I didn't actually get any notice from this, just from my neighbor. It seems as though I should have gotten notice, or she should have gotten some notice.
How far away is that? We don't have the
It's about
map.
halfway up the street. It's like 3 houses up from the proposed. It's about, I live about halfway up that street.
Okay.
The development's on one end. I live about in the middle.
How many are you up from Henry's? You were present behind the...
Right,
what's it, Travis?
exactly, right, hey, you're before. So I'm, Penny's Brewers, Cunningham, myself, so I'm a board of Brewer. And then there's a rec, and then there's the
Are you the one
lights.
right across from the Memorial Garden?
Kitty corner, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty
How
close.
many between you and the one that Bob Lyons owns?
2 residences.
You go all the way back to Whetstone Brook?
Does my house?
Yeah. Or
My-
your property, your
my-
lot?
Yeah.
So and then the other guys did too, so you're not a direct abutter, that's why you didn't get warned for this one, I assume.
Probably, yeah, I mean, whatever. But though it seems as though I'm pretty close, that if you're that close, one should get, I mean, it might not be in the,
There's a threshold for it, and I think it's direct abutters,
Yeah.
is it not? Brian?
just insofar as warning, but you can still offer your,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Your
It
comment.
seems as though, if I didn't know, if I'm not warned, then I don't know it's even gonna happen or not. I just-
Well,
Yeah.
Right.
Not true, I mean, it's posted downstairs, it's posted upstairs, it's posted online, the things, so you'd have to look for it to find it, but,
it's
Right.
also
Point-
supposed
point
to be
taken.
posted on the land itself.
yeah,
would-
there was a sign out there, I thought.
But I wouldn't be looking for it. I mean, this is sort of future, this is sort of a moot point. But it seems as though, neighbors, people within a certain distance ought to be, notified just for good, civil purposes.
Before you say what you're going to say, can we just, as a courtesy to Mr. Ellis, add him to the list of people if there is a site plan application?
Certainly.
Okay. So,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I don't know how much of the hearing you were here for.
0.
Let me just tell you what happened briefly, and this may be helpful to you. There were a couple of abutters, including Bob and his brother, Lyons, and they were frustrated that the parcel was being chopped up into 3 pieces, and that 3 to 4 unit buildings were being proposed on 2, and 1 to 2 unit building on the other. The issue, though, is that the zoning district that the property is in has a minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet for the big buildings and 6,000 for the smaller one. As long as the applicant meets that minimum, which he did it was not close, we can't impose a higher artificial minimum than what the law says it is. There was also concern about the brook and the steep slopes, and one of the conditions of the approval for the application was that he show the slope on his map and the little side brook. Was it Herrick? Herrick Brook, on the map, and the applicant testified that the buildings won't be in the special flood hazard area within 50 feet of the brook, and he said about 100 feet from the steep slope would be the closest building. I'm merely updating you on what happened. Feel free to tell us what you want to tell us.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your taking my testimony. And mostly I'm here just to say that it was a bit of a shock to have, and this may not be the meeting, but to have that kind of development in that neighborhood is pretty different than it is now.
Right, so when he actually builds there, he's going to have to apply for site plan approval for whatever the specific
Okay.
buildings are and the
Yeah.
number of units. And what I asked Mr. Bannon, our clerk, to do is to see that you get a mailing if and when he makes that application.
Okay.
So if there are issues about traffic and things like that that you want to raise,
Right.
that would be the proper venue to do that. With subdivision, the list of things that we can review is pretty slim.
So you're saying that he can subdivide it into 3 lots, and that's okay, but now, does it also say that he can have his, 3 or 4 unit?
It says that, well, what we're saying is that he can have lots that size for that use. But when it's time to build, he has to move for site plan approval, or he has to apply for the specific way he's going to do it to be approved. And that's when we look at many additional factors.
Okay.
This is really just, does he have enough land to do what he's doing, and are the sites of the proposed buildings appropriate? Are they not on a steep slope or on the side of a cliff or in the middle of a flood hazard area or something like that?
Okay, it's a nice flat area, I can see why you approved it.
Some.
It would just be a shame to have it in this.
But-
Before we close this, Mr. Chair, I know you expressed a certain lack of certainty about whether this testimony would be considered by court if for some reason it ever went there. Unlikely. And it's not a serious matter because you'll probably be back again with concerns that will be addressed anyway at the site plan review. However, I think would it behoove this person testifying to actually put his concerns on paper and send a copy either to the town, to the zoning administrator, who could then send it to the applicant, so that the applicant is aware of your testimony? It seems like that's the issue, isn't it?
I don't know if this counts as being on the record, and you guys have dueling due process issues where it doesn't appear you're an abutter under the definition, but if you were, you would have been entitled to notice. And he's not here to deal with the person confronting him, so he doesn't get to deal with what you're saying now. I'm not sure how that shakes out. I don't think Mr. Gave's suggestion is a bad one. Mr. Bannon, did you want to weigh in on that?
Just that, his testimony will be noted in the decision.
Yeah.
The board hasn't been rigorous about making determinations of interested parties, which
Right.
are typically quite liberal.
We try to be liberal, but you have to understand, if you were to appeal this to the next level, which is the environmental court, it's possible they may say that you don't have standing because you were late, or because you don't abut and you're not an interested party the way that the law says that. But we like to hear from people, and we try to hear from as many people as we can. And I understand you didn't, show up late because you're being a jerk, but we just want to make you aware of the procedural framework that we're all operating in.
No, I appreciate that.
And putting stuff on writing is always a good idea. So
Okay.
if you want to write to the zoning administrator and say, hey, I think I have an interest and I want to receive notice, we'll try to do that for you.
Okay, and it's like I say, it's not the zoning, it's the nature of the development that would concern me, so that would be the next.
Right.
And you'll have another chance at that.
It's not a done deal yet at all, so.
And
Okay.
also,
Well, I suspect that would be what you would actually have objections to. It seems like it'd be a lot more fundamentally difficult for you to muster some legitimate I don't mean legitimate, but bona fide objections to what we just approved,
Right.
because based on the numbers and the framework that we have to work with, what he asked for, buildings notwithstanding, falls between the lines.
Right, so I'm not contesting that at all. Yeah.
I mean, like he says, if anything, you want to make sure you make it to the next one, and bring your concerns with you for certain, so.
And one other thing I'll tell you before you leave, Mr. Ellis, the whole town is having its zoning ordinances rewritten by the Planning Commission at the moment. And if you're frustrated that 8,000 square feet is the minimum square footage in your zoning district, it would be a good time for you to come to one of those meetings and say that. And it may be that a higher minimum would be appropriate and they would agree with you. This is only for your information, and this is not something we do, but.
And that meeting sometime.
The notices are online on the.
When
on
you
the
walk
board
out
there.
this hallway out here, you'll see all those colored things on the wall over there. Grab one of them. They explain the whole timeline and tell you what it's about, and it even's got some brief facts on how the districts are changing. And it'll tell you the web address where you can go and look at the full draft of that policy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and
All
every,
those things hanging on the wall out there, just head out that way. You'll see them on the left as you're going out. And that's all about the new zoning.
and there's a
Which happens
planning,
once every 10 years, right, Jim? Is that about?
God willing.
Even longer than that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the first one since '87,
Yeah.
I think. There's a planning commission meeting here Monday at 6.
6.
I should know because I'm on it. So if you want to come to that and talk about this, it might be helpful for the people who are doing the zones to know this.
Okay, that's the,
Planning commission.
when do we know, when will I know, when will I know when the next step of this development in Guilford Street?
So when he applies, he has to submit an application, and even though you may not qualify as an interested party, as a courtesy, you're now on our mailing list.
Excellent. And that just depends upon when he decides to do that, right? Could be anything, could be never, right?
Could be
Or
this
a
week,
month,
could be 2 months from now, could be next year. Yeah.
It seems like he's planning to move forward. He has gotten state permits for the wastewater, and he's also taken out water allocations from the town. So typically that means he's
And
planning
then
to.
how soon after he does that is there a meeting?
What does it have to be, 30 days?
Yeah, it's typically 3 weeks after an application is submitted. So,
Okay,
yeah.
great. Well, thank you, see you then.
Yeah, sorry for the
It's
mix-up,
my-
but,
it's my problem. Thank you very
okay,
much.
have a nice
Good
night.
night.
Sorry everybody for you guys.
Good luck.
Mr. Gould, could you please tell us about your project?
Good evening, I'm Eli Gould. I actually was hoping I could say out loud first that you may have seen already. There's some materials. I decided that that I realized I had asked for a waiver to potentially have more employees than my cottage industry of 4 currently allows. And I realized in talking with Rod some more that that's really a use that I shouldn't have asked for a waiver for.
Just because we have a couple of members who are new,
Yep.
I'm familiar with your parcel because you've been before the board when I was on it, but you have a permit as a cottage industry.
Correct.
Can you just tell us what's going on there right now?
Yeah. So I guess it was 2006.
6, I think.
We bought a property in 2002 or 3 that was going to be surrounded by our future building lot. At the time, it had 0 value. It was a falling down barn surrounded by brush, and we began a very long process to try and bring that back to something. In 2005 or 6, we came in for a cottage industry permit, and we asked to establish a small, what was a portable sawmill, as a sawmill as part of a diversified farm, and to restore the old barn into something in which we could do finished timber frame and stairs and basically architectural woodworking. So that is what we had a permit for. We've been struggling to keep on going with the project, even based on low property values. We have borrowed what we could against it, and every year we try and do a little more on it, but we continue to build timber frame and stairs and other woodworking there. We don't currently run the sawmill, but we still have it under cover there, and that's not part of this application at all at this point. I had thought that I could ask for the right to have more employees at some point, and I am going to ask you guys about how this works, because I do have more people on my payroll. But for instance, in this year, we cut a large timber frame there with 4 guys for 2 months this summer. We also rented space for 4 other guys to build other components of the same building downtown, and we had 4 guys on site. So that's a fairly typical spread. We believe that to be fully in the spirit of what we came in for. And we're really, even though we'd like to get some more space there and move forward with some plans, we're pretty comfortable staying with that same cottage industry, especially because we hear there's a rewrite of zoning that may allow for, there may be some things coming, like I'm not sure what the term was, but there may be a woodworking enterprise that more closely fits what we've become, or there may also be an opportunity to come in and do I'm not sure what the term is again, but like a rural PUD where we would...
Conditional uses.
Yep. So at this point, we're really not asking for a change in use, but we are asking for permission to go forward with permitting for a new utility building on an existing slab. And the slab has been there since the, I don't know, I think the late 60s or early 70s. And we have won a statewide public fund that got a fair amount of publicity, but it's worth saying that we won that it's debt, not a grant, and we're still tied to our own property values, which are low. So we've asked to actually reduce we can't afford to take our whole winnings, and we would like to ask the state for half of that to do a in-scale rural facility, and we'd like to ask them for the other half to come and do something downtown, but that's all in the future. So what we're asking for today is a permit to build a utility building as an extension of our existing facility, and that we don't have a loan, we don't have a loan agreement. They need to see that we can get a permit for this before that. So even if we get this permit, there's no guarantee that we can qualify for this. It's a long process. In the meantime, we've secured our own private financing and have some matching infrastructure grant from the Working Lands Enterprise Board. So we under previous permitting intend to proceed with finishing out our barn that we have there and putting in sewer and water. That in turn will help us with our property value so we can afford to do this. But
There's sewer out there?
No, I shouldn't have said sewer.
Septic.
Private septic, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
I was gonna say.
So,
Are you giving yourself an easement to a field on a separate property?
yes, my wife and I own the 2 acres adjacent, and it's excellent septic soils. This is all gravel in ground, and so we're designing and permitting a single in-ground system that can serve both of these parcels.
Does the water logic, one of those really big types?
It's actually all, it's a trench system in ground. There's 7 feet of gravel on the site, so.
One of the things you're applying for is a waiver of the impervious surface requirement. Can you talk a little bit about why you need that impervious
Yeah,
surface?
so when we bought the barn as a pre-subdivision 0.1 acre lot that only included the land under it. We came back, I guess, 2 years ago or so. Once we owned the 3 acres surrounding it, we came back to ask if we could make that a less non-conforming lot by making that into a 1.05 acre lot. and reducing our house lot size correspondingly. That made the whole cluster of farm buildings something I could cover under one liability policy, have one business use there, and separate more clearly from a home lot, which my wife and I hope to build on someday. So it removed the overlapping things there, but it's only 1.05 acres. It's filled with pre-existing farm buildings that are no doubt higher than 0.15, although not hugely higher. The fact that we're proposing to build on an existing slab is not going to change the impervious surface by a large amount. And there's a really falling down building called the fertilizer shed that's really right out by the road. And as part of this, we'd like to remove that building so we could improve sight lines and access in and out. And we're hoping that the removal of that as a building will at least allow us to keep our impervious surface as it is, but it's likely to be non-conforming on that front, so I would think I'd apply for a waiver.
The impervious surface is already there.
Yep.
As it is. Has it caused any drainage problems, or has the gravel underneath been enough to deal with that?
Yeah, like I was saying, I'm not aware of any runoff problems whatsoever given the site conditions. There's no pavement and there's none proposed.
Okay. You said the use is going to generate about 20 trips a day, traffic?
Yeah, when I would have myself and 4 people there, which is really seasonal, I want to make sure that's understood, is that we've never been there year round, and even if we did, that would be my guys driving to work. We also do, we carpool to our sites. So I often have guys meet me there in the morning, get into a company van, and head out from there.
Is that a large portion of the road's traffic, Abbott Road?
I don't believe so.
No. There's other traffic on Abbott Road, I think.
And the access to the site is going to stay the same?
Yeah, we'd actually like to improve, not necessarily where it is, but if, and this is mostly, my father-in-law goes in and out of there with a manure spreader every day, and the way people come down Ames Hill and up onto that, we drive up onto the road in such a way that it's pretty hard to see who's coming, and I'd like to elevate that so there's better sight lines for both us and for them, but the location would be the same.
But in terms of delivery vehicles getting in or the vehicles coming in and out, that's been sufficient?
Yeah, we don't do a whole lot of that there. For instance, the home, and because we're not necessarily, the home that I was referring to this summer where we had 4 guys cutting a timber frame for 2 months, was 1 tractor trailer load coming in, and 2 months later there was 1 tractor trailer load going out.
The speeds that cars are going to be going on site is low, right?
I hope so. I mean, It's mostly us who are being sped by.
And the amount of parking spaces is going to be adequate for the amount of workers you intend to have there in maximum conditions, or people who might be there?
Yeah, it has been, although we also share, well, we don't share, but we provide, as a courtesy, recreational parking for the Round Mountain trails, and I think they use the parking more than we do. We do have a spot on the inside of this lot. If you look in right next to the building marked Sawmill, we often park in there just because trucks are off the road, and actually the way that it's up above Ames Hill and down below Abbott Road, you can't actually see anybody's vehicles in there, so we park in there usually.
Is the building you propose conforming, does it conform with the commercial building energy standards?
That's a good question. I certainly would propose that it would. It's gonna get, even though it looks like a barn with a greenhouse on it, it's gonna be subject to a lot more internal scrutiny than a usual building We're gonna have an ADA bathroom, and an eye wash fountain, and any kind of fire ratings that we need. So I would certainly think, given how we build and what we build, that we would also conform to the energy code, yes.
Is there going to be any lighting there?
Outdoor lighting?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We'd like to have a downlight over the front door, like a barn style. But I can show
This
that
is
on
so you
plan.
can see the door you're going in?
Yeah, yeah. And we do, as a courtesy to you guys and anybody else who was wondering what this building was going to look like, we do have some architectural plans here. I know it's not,
Yeah, we saw.
it may or may not be relevant now, but we'd be happy to share those.
Is there any sign you're proposing to put up?
We haven't really gotten that far. I would expect if we would, and we might like to someday, but we're familiar with the sign ordinance and we would bring that forward for administrative approval, but there's none planned at this point.
Okay. That does it for my questions. Just to be clear for the newer members, the cottage industry permit that Mr. Gould has provides for the maximum number of employees as 4. And I'm just explaining what you were talking about when we started. You initially had applied for a waiver of that number, but I think that someone told you that we can make waivers part of our decisions as far as dimensional standards, but not stuff like a clearly defined limit in the statute of employees.
Yeah, I realize that. So I removed that. That's, if I can get this thing financed and built and continue to be, a good, quiet business there, and can come back with a fresh zoning ordinance and other conditions, and talk to my neighbors some more about what might work, then I would hope that, especially because some of the things we're going to be doing here are going to be more office and research and just plain wood drying and really low impact stuff, I would hope we could come back and say we would like to create more jobs, but we would be happy to have any conditions needed about truck traffic or noise or anything else.
And you heard my advice to Mr. Ellis about coming to the planning commission, so I won't give you that advice.
Okay, thank you.
Did you see the email from Chief Picosi about the need to submit your construction application to the Vermont Division of Fire Safety?
Was that to me? I haven't seen that yet, but
No, that's to us. I just
No.
want to know if you had done that, if anybody had done that yet.
No, I haven't done that yet.
It'll just be a condition.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, anything else from the board?
I'm wondering if, I'm sorry, go ahead. If there's any additional impervious surface that you're gonna have there. You'll tear down the shed and you'll add a slab. Is that gonna increase the amount of impervious?
The slab's already there.
So you're not gonna be adding to the slab that's already there?
Well, no, I think that what we would add on the side of it, it looks like is right about net to what we're gonna take away. And if you see also, or when I show these plans, our greenhouse structure actually has a round front, so if it was really which we're gonna place on a flat slab, I mean, I suppose if it was really a concern, then we could remove the portions of the slab that were not rounded, but I would much rather go to a performance-based mitigation of some sort if there's really any problem, and I'd be happy to have a site engineer look at what would mitigate any problem if there was one, but I think that.
How much of that used to be gravel pit? What was the size of it, do you know?
Well, I do know on the 2-acre lot where we thought we were going to get really good gravel, most of it had been taken out in one area, so I think it was probably a chunk of the top of that hill. It was probably used to be 1.5 acres. I don't really know.
So just so I know what I'm voting on.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at your site diagram, there's a rounded
Yep.
end. And the square portion at the top is gonna go away?
No, perhaps I can show you on that, or
The shed is
that,
Come on up.
there's a small building. there's multiple small buildings there, but
So this is what you're adding?
yes, and this building here, which is basically blocking all access, and is.
Okay, so that's
really
what's
falling
going on.
over. I'd like to
Okay.
take away this building.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the
So
new,
this,
this slab's all here, but if I add this in new.
Well, this is the only new slab right here then.
Right, exactly.
Okay, I was looking at this much of it.
yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
confused.
and like I was saying, if there was a real problem, we could remove some of this slab, but I would hate to, though.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how or if it's appropriate to share these, but I'm, you have to hand them out.
Pass them around. Thank you, sir.
This is the nurse. I was thinking we were gonna go here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I thought.
I'm okay.
It's a
Just
larger
just a bigger version of that. Questions from the board? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this application? I swore all of you guys in, correct?
Yeah, they were all here.
Brian Howe. Not exactly sure how it got to be a cottage industry. That was before I purchased the land across the road. The first concern is I support Eli's business. That was zero.
Could you speak a little louder?
I can't support his building a commercial building in a rural residential area. We all live up there to get away from commercial in our town. The septic system for the barn, going on to the other portion of the land. It should, eventually, I'm assuming they still want to build a house on it someday, so is that taking away from, is there still a replacement area there for the septic system for the house? Would the house be added to the septic system that would be going on to that property?
Are you saying yes, Eli?
Yes, I'm saying yes.
Where you do come off the road, I don't know how much you plan to build that up, it does get wet there, where it first stored 35 plus years ago.
Are you talking about at the top there?
Yeah, where you come off of Abbott Road, down into the property, by the shed that's gonna be torn down.
Yep.
Where the parking is now, it's a bit of a mud hole. I don't know how much that's gonna get filled in.
Is the water, are you able to tell if the water's coming off the Gould property or the?
When it storms or in the spring, it settles in there, I don't know which way it's coming from. Everything settles in there.
Is it near the impervious surface? Is it near the slab?
It's adjacent to those buildings, yes.
Okay.
And it is very much a blind entrance as you come up off of Amesville Road, onto Abbott Road.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. You catch the mothers in the minivans, come down in the morning, ready for school.
Let me just ask a question. I'll let you talk. Where's the closest impervious surface to the area that gets wet on the road? Do you know what he's talking about?
Yeah, I definitely do.
I'm using your map, so if you can
Sure.
explain to me using your map, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of water coming down towards, if we're looking at,
I assume it's here, right?
no, this is the.
You can come up and watch
Yeah,
this.
right, maybe. So, we provided an easement for them to get to the manure pile and everything else. And when we made the lot line, we had to make it with respect to the 25-foot side yard setback. So we made a lot line, and this is where they store their minerals and fertilizers. So we decided we would try and put an access road up high. And this pool, which is big right through here, probably partially on their parcel and partially on ours. And we would hope to actually elevate this so that's not as much of a hole. And it's a pretty valid. Yeah.
But it rains, it's big.
Yeah.
Is it a big puddle in the spring or whenever it rains?
Whenever there's,
And how much of that gets out on the
it's
road?
actually, you look at the tax map, it's wet, they can actually extend it.
How much of that gets out into the road?
Well, the road's elevated, but it's coming down too.
Okay.
This whole side hill is
Yeah.
wet.
Does it stay on their property for the most part?
It goes down from here.
Okay.
As level as West Fargo gets.
Right, okay. Thank you, guys. And Brian, could you explain the cottage industry use? This is one I don't know off the top of my head. Just while we're on the record to address what Mr. Tyler was asking about before.
It's intended to be small enterprises which are compatible with residential uses. So it has limits on noise and outdoor storage and number of employees. And any approved cottage industry is conditioned on maintaining those standards.
I don't know if that's helpful to you, Mr. Tyler.
But I'm just going off the definition off your website, which is carried out of a dwelling unit or its accessory buildings. There's no dwelling unit on the property. I'm not sure how it falls under cottage industry.
Now, the challenge is we approved that cottage industry. I frankly was not on the board when it was approved in 2006, and I have no idea what the basis for that decision was. But it's there currently. If you want to speak to that, Brian.
Yeah, and again, I think you're right. You know, the basis for approving that isn't entirely clear. I think, looking at it, I think if the board had a basis, they must have looked at more than the property for determining whether it was an association with residents. At this point, it is a use, and there hasn't been any material change in the relationship of the cottage industry to nearby residences. So there doesn't seem to be a basis to say that that existing decision has become invalid.
But it's...
Because it does create a
Eli's
vested
been
property
here for
interest.
many years, and everyone in the neighborhood supports his business, which has been a startup for a number of years, so everybody wants to see him grow and hopefully prosper. But now it's gotten to the point where it's a commercial enterprise, and it's in a residential area. So our feeling is it's time for it to move on.
What do you feel changed?
Feel changed? Well, it's...
You just got done saying you and all the neighbors support him, and now you're saying...
I'm supporting his business.
Right. What changed between what he was doing a year ago and what he's doing now?
What's changing is what he wants to do, which is what it says in your grant or in all the newspaper articles, is he wants to start prefabbing and building sections of buildings for houses or commercial buildings, whatever it is, and shipping them out to assemble them on a construction site. He's been doing that in the barn for a number of years, and now it seems like it's going to expand, grow, and everybody's been okay with it because he's been growing and building his business, and now nobody's complaining, but now it's going to...
You fear noise, traffic?
There's probably more noise for Neil than there is for me, a little bit further away, but you have a lot of retirees that live in the area.
Is that yours with the little pond?
Yes, the fire pond.
Sorry.
And the traffic that we going, there's got to be deliveries of products coming in, and it's going to be shipped back out. So it's going to, whether it's on Abbott Road or Amesville, it's going to be in and out of there. And, it's just the noise, the traffic, everything that goes along with commercial things.
Do you want to respond to any of this?
Yeah, well, I'd certainly love to, and I also feel as if some of this is really the fact that as I've been trying to get to anything financeable and talk to my family about what makes sense and everything else, I haven't spent enough time going around talking to neighbors, and we can certainly do some more of that. But I'm really comfortable in this as a format to where I wouldn't want to have a business there or a future house there next to something which didn't fit in this neighborhood. And when I won this, and it was a chunk of money, I can't afford to, nor should I put all that money into a full enterprise on this site. So I went back to the state and I said, I really only want to do the really rural compatible half of this on this site, and would you please give me the option to go downtown with the second half of my award, and it gives me and them a chance to make sure that I can execute first what I've said I'm going to do, and then if it does grow, then I can go from there. So the prototyping, this is not the right place. I would totally agree with Brian and all our neighbors that this would not be the right place to ramp up a major prefab operation, and I wouldn't necessarily want to do that. There's some quiet prototyping, R&D, and 2 nationally recognized engineers who would like to be in this building with me doing testing. And we also have a real need for more space for our wood drying and our structural lumber efforts, and that's really the use of this building. There's no major industrial expansion contemplated here. I'd be really comfortable, and I'd want to make sure that anything that did imply a change in noise or anything else would get full review. And that's kind of why I realized if the cottage industry was an older terminology and we now have some other more rural specific language coming up, then let's just stay in a holding pattern, and I'll come back in for that once I've built these buildings and can show that.
Can we talk about noise specifically?
Sure.
Is the use of this building, is it going to create more noise than what you're doing?
No.
Can you just explain why that is?
Yeah, we currently, when we cut a timber frame, for instance, the noisiest thing we have is a planer, and we try, but at this point even we've been buying in some pre-planed timbers, so I don't know that the noise of what we cut this summer, I certainly hope not, was really anything beyond our saws that are inside, and I certainly hope we've been respectful. I know that nail guns are a lot louder. We tend to not really do a whole lot of that. I do also know that probably the noisiest part of this whole thing will be in a construction season itself when we're building it. But but I think when we're inside drying lumber here, there's going to be some forklift noise. There's going to be some machines moving around. But even when we last ran our sawmill, which was 2 years ago, that's got the same engine as a Volkswagen Bug. And we'd be really comfortable with any kind of decibel level at property lines that were fair.
Do you have like a large air compressor or anything like that?
We have a small air compressor. We don't use it during our timber frame operations a lot. When we needed to build on a bigger scale this year, we rented Riverside Industrial, and we built most of the large sections, the actual stick-built sections of our house down there, and made noise and did that. But we can't rent that kind of space to dry lumber or test lumber or have engineers, and it's just not, that part of it really didn't make sense. So we should definitely make clear, and hopefully this process will make clear that what we're trying to do up here is really going to be the most rural compatible, but we haven't made that very clear yet, so I fully understand people's concerns.
Mr. Tyler, is the sound level presently acceptable to you at least?
That's my wife, she's home most of the time. But,
You're the only guy I've got here.
I can hear it, yes. Is it deafening? No.
Is it frequent?
But no, not this time of year, no, it's not.
Okay.
During the summer months, when things are opened up, yes.
Okay.
And I just think I'm more worried about setting a precedent for the neighborhood.
Okay.
A commercial, industrial building.
Mr. Gould, are there going to be under any circumstances, even in the summer, more than 2 deliveries or shipments a day?
I don't see that happening, but if, and certainly if that's a condition, then we can abide by that. But we are not a trucking intensive operation by any means. There's a lot more trucks coming and going than what we do. I mean, so long as we can get to work in our personal vehicles.
Does anybody else have questions for either Mr. Tyler or the applicant?
So you're gonna be using this for office space, a lot of this?
We have one area in there where we'd like to have a bathroom and 2 desks and time cards, and so that's it's a 12 by 28 area or so.
Everybody on the board satisfied? Are there other members of, or, I'm sorry, Mr. Tyler, you're not done?
Because I don't know the answer to this.
No, that's
There's
okay.
several buildings on the property, and the density that we were talking about in the previous, I don't know how that plays into what's going on.
You're talking about the impervious surfaces?
Yeah,
Well-
the buildings that are on the property.
Sure, so,
1.58.
so the maximum without a waiver, I think, is 30%, right?
Just 15.
Oh, just 15, okay. And we're up around 30? Are you sure it's not 30? That's what it says on our...
Did you
Well, hold
came
on.
up with the number, or did you get that from our surveyor?
No, I came up with it using Google.
So let me just explain, Mr. Todd. So we're empowered to waive that requirement if we think that it's not going to cause the type of adverse effect that impervious surfaces sometimes do. Usually the problem is runoff. The fact that this property is essentially on a gravel pit, which seems like it would have great drainage, tends to mitigate or at least make an argument for the applicant having that exception to the I keep saying minimum, but I mean maximum impervious surface. So that's his argument for a waiver. And if you think that argument is not correct, or that there's going to be problems for adjoining parcels, or that it's going to impact the road or have some other negative effect because of that higher level of impervious surfaces, now's the time to tell us.
I don't know if it would have an effect, but there's a steep drop off to get from the property down to Ames Hill Road. That's a swampy hole at the bottom next to the road.
Right.
There's always water coming out of the bottom of that, but I don't know if this will have any effect.
Okay.
There's a spring there too, which we have tried to develop and for the use of livestock. So that's a natural wet area which
Down there in the basin sort of area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the waiver for 21% or 30%?
Well, I think that our survey showed 21% and Brian's Google was showing something more, so.
I think the difference is yours was based on the area of the buildings, and I also included the area of driveways.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Driveways and parking areas.
Okay.
So you calculated 45%. The
Basically,
buildings being
45% is
20.
everything that's not vegetated.
Mr. Tyler, is that your property where the fire pond is? Yes. Okay. That's kind of like right where Ames Hill kind of comes up and meets with Abbott, or makes the bend where Abbott comes down, right?
Yes. Can I ask for a stop sign there?
Wrong committee. What is that, traffic safety?
Traffic safety.
You go to traffic safety, they can do that.
It does need a stop sign.
I agree with you entirely, we don't have that power. So, I grew up in Marlboro, so I've made that craning of my neck, yeah. it was
You're the
me.
one, yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Jim,
Yes.
I would like to go into deliberative session.
I just want to see if anybody else from the public has any comments, but I think that's a good suggestion.
Hi, I'm Neil Manders, and I live not an adjacent property, but just down from where Eli's talking to. So let me give you sort of a quick background. I'm not sure that that's appropriate and whatever, but Eli bought my mother-in-law's house, which was directly above me, with his dear wife Jessica. And Eli was trying to get started with things, and it turned out that that barn was falling down. We've got some gorgeous pictures done by Maisie Crowther, that paintings of that gorgeous old barn, and Eli kind of came along and through a variety of circumstances acquired the barn and started to take it down. And starting his business, he was trying to get things up and running, and so consequently he saw that barn, I think, as a good spot to sort of do that. None of us had any objections to that. It was sort of like an extension of the house that he was in, that he didn't quite have enough room to do what he needed to do. And so this became sort of an extended barn or an extended garage off the house where he lived. He could walk to it. In fact, he frequently walked through my driveway to get there, which was wonderful.
Can you help us clarify for that? Where is that in relation to this?
Okay,
Is that
I
further
am
up Abbott?
I am, as you're coming out Ames Hill Road,
Yeah.
and you get out to the Thurber
From
Farm,
the
you
low
come,
ground,
you
right?
come to Cubby Road,
Yeah,
that intersection of Cubby Road.
yep,
Mort Brooks's place was right there on the corner
Right.
with the pool swimming
Yeah.
pool. I'm in Mort's backyard.
okay,
I'm in that big blue house that's on the side of it.
yeah.
So, and Eli bought my mother-in-law's place, which was the house that was up on the hill. So if you went up Covey Road, that first house on the right was my mother-in-law's place, and that's where they purchased. So Eli could walk down and come through our driveway and walk to the house. So technically, as a community, we were thinking, okay, this is great. This is Eli's sort of extended barn. It's a place for him to work and a place for him to be filmed. I have no idea how in God's name he managed to get a cottage industry application out of that. Because for everything that I've read in terms of the bylaws in the town, it requires that you actually be part of your dwelling. My wife's a knitter. She loves to knit. And if we brought in 3 people and put up knitting machines in our main room, that would be a cottage industry because we would use less than 40% of the dwelling. That's what your law says, less than 40%. At least that's what I read. So maybe that's a
home
change.
business.
Or a home business, either way.
Those are 2 different uses, though.
Okay, so maybe somebody needs to explain what the difference is between a home business and a cottage industry. I don't know.
Cottage industries are larger.
Cottage
It
industry.
says you have to have a house there, right?
There's specific standards where,
It says right there.
yeah, there's a definition where it says it should be in association with the residents, and then there's specific standards which focus on the number of deliveries, the noise, air pollution.
Is it off a connection to a residence?
It doesn't, but they're both they both go together, the definition and the standards.
Do we know if, I'm sorry to interrupt
You guys
you.
don't just read what
No,
it says?
I have it.
Oh, you have it?
Yeah.
To be clear, this isn't actually a change of use application. This is site plan for the construction of a building. The cottage industry is something that exists. It has for years, and that was never appealed after it was approved, for good or bad. So, you know, he has a vested property right in that now, which can't be dissolved by this site plan review.
So you're saying it's a fait accompli, I mean, it's done.
It's a
For
grand.
whatever reason, yes.
Right or wrong, good or bad, that's it.
But if you're applying for today, it wouldn't be approved because it doesn't apply.
I mean, it doesn't look that way to me. It's
If you applied
just,
today, it would be approved.
none of us, well, actually, yeah, I don't think any of us were on the board that approved it, and I'd be surprised if anybody remembered, but once the judgment sits for 30 days and nobody appeals it, that horse is out of the barn, and we deal with, it becomes a precedent that we deal with, and it's grandfathered just like, I don't know, a sign that's too big that's been around for 50 years, you know? But anyway,
Since I'm the only one, you know, here who was there during the application, and I cannot honestly remember much more about it than that it seemed to be the closest fit. We have a house lot right next to it. We did live within walking distance. I don't know if that, and I don't know if, so I'm pretty open to, and I fully intend to come back when there's a more descriptive use of a rural residential, or maybe if there is currently no permitted use in a rural residential zone, then I need to hear that from somebody, but I certainly didn't.
The bottom line is, once that judgment was in, even if it's wrong, it might have been wrong, I'm not telling you it was right. I'm just saying that becomes essentially the law of your parcel, and you're entitled to rely on that law, and we can't come back and change it now. We're not allowed to.
Does that, you don't remember why it was approved?
I believe part of that application back then included a sawmill, because I believe the sawmill was also a permitted use in that district. And
that's true.
If I recall correctly, there was discussion that there used to be a sawmill up the road from there or something like that, and I think it was attached to the sawmill part.
Yeah, and I would be happy to not only talk about some more, but also defend that as a permissible right. The sawmill specifically. I'm not as familiar with why cottage industry may have been the
if he's
the
not
best fit,
complaining
but I
about
think that
sawmill,
Joe has a point.
I don't want to get off the road.
Right.
No,
The
the sawmill
complaint is
there
not.
makes perfect sense. It was part of an agricultural thing, and you can certainly attach that right into it. There's no problem.
Right.
I guess my major concern is that, there's an awful lot of people who, when my wife meets up with them or other people meet up with them, say, oh, you live out there, what a beautiful area, it's gorgeous, it's fantastic. And were this anybody else besides Eli, I'm sure you would have heard a lot more screaming and hollering. Eli, I know, is an honest person who will do the best he can, but I think that what we're doing here is that you're opening a Pandora's box in terms of what you're going to be allowing to happen out in residential areas. That's a gorgeous area out through there, and I don't think that you particularly want to see manufacturing happening out there. Now, I know Eli will be conscious of that, but I know Eli is young, and I know he's got a young family, and opportunities knock, and people move. And that will then have set a precedent for whoever comes in next. So, I think you have to be real careful about what you're doing with this. I know Eli has done a lot for the town, and I congratulate him on the stuff. He's nationally known. I get calls from my son out in Eugene saying, hey, I just read this article, and did you know Eli was in the article? And so I know that he's an honorable person in those ways. But again, I have a concern that you are setting a precedent here that you're not going to want to meet up with. I'm 70 years old. 10 years from now, I'm not going to be involved in this. I can guarantee you that. But 10 years from now, you are, and this town is going to be involved. And if you want them to have some kind of a manufacturing facility out there, I think you're going to ruin that area. You drove down, you said you're from Marlboro. I'm sure you came down Ames Hill Road on frequent occasions. And to come down and to see any kind of manufacturing, to see wood piled outside, to see partial buildings made outside, to see whatever that happens to be outside all of a sudden, then you may regret the decision. So I guess that's my concern.
James, if I could just to clarify, the cottage industry, it's really a definition based on performance standards. So what that means is, instead of looking at exactly what the function is inside, what they're looking at is how it impacts on what's outside. So storage of materials outside, that's not allowed. Excessive noise outside, that's not allowed either. So if somebody were to come along in 10 years and do something else, the question would be, does it still have that appearance and impact on the outside and at the boundary line of the property where it's non-offensive to the adjacent uses?
Yeah.
That's really what that use is trying to
I understand that a lot of that is so. However, I also understand the reality is how often does this get checked up on?
You can report them.
Oh, yeah. But it's got to be initiated by some angry individual or some upset or somebody who has a concern about it, and not because it happens to be violation of the code itself. So no, we don't have zoning police running around saying, are you abiding by this? Have you got the right amount of runoff? Have you got, you know, stacks of wood here or there or the other things, unless it gets real obnoxious. I mean, how long have we been waiting for Diamond Stone to clean up? You know?
That was a special case.
Yeah, right. So.
He took us to court and won.
I know, Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Okay. You're free to put as much on the record as you wish, or ask questions.
Is this being permitted for Ironwood brand? Is that just for you, for Ironwood brand?
Yeah, Ironwood brand, my sole member LLC owns the property itself and all the liability insurance on it. And our limited low profit wood division basically won the grant for wood science and research. But Ironwood brand owns 100% of the property, all the business equipment there.
So I know Ironwood brand's comprised of 5 different corporations, right? So are they all allowed to work there, or is just Ironwood brand allowed?
Well, I think the way the permit works is that Ironwood would be the only cottage industry there and be restricted to 4 employees. The way it's proposed, nothing's been approved yet, but that's the proposal, and that would be the limit pursuant to the law. And I think if they were to, say, rent that to another business that wanted to use that site, whoever was using it would be subject to using it as a cottage industry, just as Ironwood had.
You would have to come back for a permit for that? Or
No, well,
or just work under that?
no, I don't think so. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. But I think if Ironwood wasn't using it and, say, wanted to rent it out to someone who was doing the same thing with the same building that person,
Same.
I think they would be subject to
All
the
5
same
are
limitations.
slightly different, so
What's that?
all 5 corporations don't all do the same thing, obviously.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the buildings that are subject to the permit that he's applying for would have to be used as a cottage industry no matter what entity was using them. I mean, conceivably Ironwood could go out of business and then someone would own the land and the permit would run with the land, so.
Can I get clarification on that for a second? So,
I'll try.
The cottage industry is not attached to Eli Gould at all. It's attached to a business.
It's attached to the building, to the property.
Forever? Now, is that transferable? If he sells that, does that automatically make, because that's going to have a big effect on the value of the building for him.
My property.
If they don't,
And his property.
if they don't change it, it seems to me that it would run with the property. They'd still be subject to the same limitations, 4 employees, no stuff outside, everything has to be enclosed, no more than 2 delivery per day average. But, yeah.
I'm finding this amazing because when we had Irene come through, I must have spent hundreds of hours trying to even let the state let me fill in and reclaim my bank that Irene wiped out. And
Well, we, just keep in mind, we've not approved this. This is what he's applying for, and if it's granted, that's what it will mean. I'm just clarifying that.
thank you.
Yep.
All right, last question.
Just, since you haven't been up, could you just identify yourself?
I'm Pierre Capia, I'm property on Covey Road. My understanding, I suppose, just wanting clarification, was from reading the articles that this was going to be a manufacturing facility. And I don't want to really see a manufacturing facility in the neighborhood. And that the company was called Precraft Manufacturing, which is one of your companies, Precraft Manufacturing. And so is that the company that's going to be there, Precraft Manufacturing?
Yeah, we basically, with our same employees, and I'm sure you've seen this before too, we decided that our LLC did not make a lot of sense to have all of our payroll through. So we founded a corporation for all payroll. Everybody works for that. It's still 100% owned by me, and we also have some intellectual property and some R&D stuff that we would like to do and not not be part of that same company. So these are sole member LLCs, it's the same bunch of guys, and it's really just a matter of making sure that we had insurance protection and separate liability for everybody. But it's been the same number of people and the same use all along. What's happened to me over the years is that, you know, we're a company that does everything from sawmill to architecture, and that gets complicated when you're trying to do insurance. So to have a dedicated company where each activity is happening separately has ultimately made a lot more sense for us. But it's not a change in our team in any way.
But ultimately, whoever's in control of this, if the application is approved, is going to be using 4 employees or less?
Absolutely.
Okay. And less 2 delivery average per week?
Well, we can commit to that without a problem at all.
This is just average.
Wait, 2 per week?
2 per day, sorry.
Thanks.
I think is it 12 or 14 per week, Brian?
It's 14 per week.
14 per week, right. And there's going to be no increase in noise pollution?
We can also commit to that.
No increase in noise level?
Yeah, and I think what is really happening here is we won a bold thing and we realized that we shouldn't do it all on this site. So we've asked for a scaled back R&D and prototyping only here, and the only manufacturing per se is what we've always been doing there, which is building stairs, timber frames, and you know, our primary products. But if we get bigger, you'll see the sign down here. But
I mean, didn't you say earlier that you'd like to come back once the rules are changed and then ask for a permit to get bigger? Did you already say that earlier tonight?
mostly because cottage industry at 4 and my business being, you know, something where I have, you know, as many as 9 or 10 on my payroll, I would like for the right to bring more than 4 people there at certain times of the year.
Right.
But I'd like for that to happen within a properly defined zoning ordinance where I can say to you guys what I'm going to do, and it's not something where we're just looking for the best fit. And I'm comfortable, you know, with any kind of conditions there, but there are times in which I'd love to have 6 timber framers there, and I don't believe they'd be any louder than 4. So if it's a performance-based standard, then I'd like to go right to that. And I didn't see that in our current zoning ordinance. So,
is the volume of stuff you'll be producing different with the new building?
it's mostly about drying and about having storage, and we have used that slab for outdoor storage, because when we're building a whole building in that barn, we need to get things moved out of there. So even if it's just yarding it up on that slab until we can load to leave, I'd prefer for that to happen in a building now. So that's part of the purpose of this.
So there's more room for storage, but what about the actual manufacture of buildings on the site? Is that going to change with the new building?
We still...
The amount of work that's done?
The amount of work that's done, we would like to add new lines. We'd like to do more of our stairs, we'd like to add what components we could offer, but we're fully comfortable respecting any kind of reasonable conditions about what that is. And generally, we're value added, so we try and make more money on less volume and less materials, but we do that through labor and through craft. And so having more people there to add more value makes more sense to us. To do a full timber frame on one tractor trailer is a lot better for us than to do 10 tractor trailer loads of lumber, and that's been our strategy all along. So we'd be able to add more value, have more people there, but I don't see any volume in terms of physical product that's going to radically change.
And where did you say you lived? I'm sorry.
I live on Covey Road,
How far down?
all the way at the end.
Okay.
So my sort of historical concern is that, you know, I sort of came to the neighborhood 17 years ago. We bought the Covey farm, which was 180 acres. We partnered with the Thurber farm, and we bought that and then split off the land to them, which was about 165 acres. The condition of that sale was that it go into land trust. They were already in the process of putting some other land into land trust, but our condition was, we're going to sell you at this price, but it's got to go into land trust. So sort of in that process, as we went along, Stu said, well, I've got kids, and I want to parcel out 4 pieces of land for them. I like them, I want them to stay here, I want to give them a piece. So we said, okay, we negotiated, we put one of those pieces of those cutouts at parcels up on the land that we had bought, and for Shabir, and one of these other pieces was the piece that he's developing now, that was a house site for someone.
No, we bought the land next to the house site, but yeah.
Well, where you
Jessica's
build
land, yeah.
now is where you're building now is one of those house sites.
Yeah,
where you
yeah,
want to
is a
build.
piece of, yeah.
Right. And then there was 2 other house sites, also for other kids that haven't been built on yet. So anyways, I don't have anything to do with where he is now, but that's sort of the history of the project, that all of this was going into land trust. The land trust said, okay, we're going to exempt these 4 parcels and give you that condition as part of this whole 600-acre land trust thing. So the site that we're talking about is actually part of the land trust, or was part of the land trust, but was conditionally brought out. So there is this nature to the neighborhood of conserving, and actually the farm did sell the development rights. There is no development that's supposed to be happening in that area. So that's, I think, the spirit of the thing. I don't know if this affects the land trust at all, or if it doesn't, or how that all works, but that was the deal that we had when we bought the property, and it was just a handshake deal, but it was the deal. So anyways, that's sort of the nature of the area and wanting it not to be developed. And I have a business that is manufacturing. I think I called today and I talked to you and I said, if we are going to have manufacturing in the neighborhood, can I renovate my barn, move my business there because it's expanding and I need manufacturing space and it's hard to find. Now, it would save me a lot of money to do that, and I can pay my employees more and can have better benefits, and that's great. But, is that something my neighbors want? I don't know. We have a delivery, every 3 weeks we have delivery. Back off.
Hey, break it up, kids.
Finally, we have solar panels, and some of our neighbors said we don't want the solar panels, so we moved them to another place. And that neighbor said, yeah, that's fine, we like solar panels, so we moved it there. So that's sort of my thing is, I really don't, even though I say, well, could we do manufacturing? And I don't know, it'd just be a renovated barn, so it wouldn't change anything on the property, you wouldn't see it. But in the truth, I really don't want a lot of manufacturing in the area because it is, it is all land trust property, all 600 acres. And so I just would rather want to see that changed. So, but it seems like there is some confusion about what's going on. But also being a business owner, I know how things go. You start this, and that evolves, and the next thing evolves, and that's the nature of the deal. Anyways, thanks.
Do you think I could speak to the land trust family thing? Although I think that's an excellent
I don't want to
point,
get
but-
into that,
All
only
right.
because if there's an issue with some prior agreement you had, this is not the venue for that, and we are not going to base our approval or
No,
denial
no,
of this
no, that's
application
understood.
on, an agreement from some other time.
But it
If
probably.
you want to say something, say it, but
No, I would just think it would be good for the record for, for Stu, who did, he conserved at this point, I don't know, 600 and something acres, which is a real anchor in Brattleboro. And he did exclude at the time some small areas for his kids to build. And then I bought a fallen down barn in the middle of my wife's future lot, knowing that was going to be our problem anyway. And but one of the fundamental zoning or underlying issues here, I believe, is that if we can come to a way to do a really compatible natural resource based business that is part of that farmland, then that's part of what, and we try and do it on 1 acre so that we really minimize our sprawl there, then that's part of what also makes that 600 acres work. And if my son or or any kids on the farm at some point want to be part of a wood-based business in the middle of 700 acres of farm and forest land, I would hope it's our good planning right now that lets that happen.
Well, one of the things we were talking about today was that...
hold on. Come to microphone, we're on TV.
One of the things we were talking about today was that it's kind of like when you're talking about farms, it's like kind of all murky and gray. You know, like the Hamilton farm, they have a sawmill, and they have an excavation business, and they have like a barn and cows, and all that money goes into the same pot. And it's, you know, it's a farm, and you were talking about a farm, how was that all that clarified? There was a sawmill at one point, and then the sawmill, and then the lines changed and things like that. And you were talking about this being a diversified farm. Is that part of Lilac Ridge Farm, or how is that?
No, we're not.
Diversified farm
No, we're,
category?
so a little background on this sawmill as a diversified farm, or as part of a diversified farm ordinance. Because my father-in-law, as part of the Ag Advisory Committee
Yeah.
in the, I don't know, he thought it might be late 70s, early 80s, was concerned that some of the farm-associated sawmills like Hamilton's and others who had had long-standing practice, you know, of seasonal use of a sawmill operation would want to make sure that they had that right in the ordinance as long as they kept to performance-based standards like decibel levels and trucks. And to establish that as a local ordinance seemed like a good idea to them at the time. They did some recommendations and some work on that, and that became part of our ordinance. It doesn't, and I do believe that that if I were to want to build a new sawmill, I'd be going to Act 250. But if I had a small sawmill which met all those criteria, and then that's something that we have established, and other other small operations have established. It would. So that part of it's not really all that murky. I guess where yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's.
No, I mean, I'm not saying that. When we were talking today, it sounded like the conversation was, well, when we're talking about a greater farm, you know, it's not clear and murky about how things are developed. But I'm sort of saying, and I think you'd agree, that this project is not a part of that farm.
That's true.
That's
That's
clear.
true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's a cottage.
Yeah.
It's a separate.
Yep, absolutely.
deal.
Yeah, no, we're not. No, we're not part of the farm in that sense. When we run our.
When I read diversified farm,
Right.
I thought, well, I was just confused.
Right. Yeah. No.
How is it a diversified farm?
That was just pulled from the definition from the last decision, and it was only applied to the sawmill.
The
portion.
ordinance for a sawmill, the sawmill as part of a diversified farm is a type of use.
Oh.
Not saying my operation is part of the farm, but when.
All right, listen.
Yeah.
The stuff we're talking about is not relevant to how we make this decision. I really don't want to be rude to you. I'm sorry.
No, I was just trying
But
to get.
I want to respect Mr. Goins' wish to go into deliberative session and get any other public comment there is.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just asking.
Okay.
That's great. No problem.
Can I ask about my property?
Yes.
Just really quick. It says something about property value, so being in a rural residential district in an area that people want to live in, I've got that piece of land, and if someday I sell it, or I want to build a house on it, and now we have a commercial operation across the road, the values drop. What's my recourse from there, if any?
It's not something we can help you with, unfortunately.
Well, you can by not approving.
Indirectly, we can by not approving it, but it's not something we're supposed to consider as one of the factors. And Brian, you want to go through the factors we go on subdivision, site approval?
Well, basically, whether it's still, you're going to look for access, landscaping, stormwater, lighting, signage, impact on use of renewable energy, on-site pedestrian circulation, adequacy of parking.
What about the roads? Ames Hill Road's only rated, and that road are both rated for 24,000 pounds.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
And we're talking about trailer trucks. How does that apply?
Because it's site plan review, it actually doesn't look at traffic impacts on municipal facilities. You come into that when you're doing a conditional use or an Act 250 permit, but this doesn't trigger those.
Weight limits? I don't.
We can't enforce them. I mean, okay, Mr. Goin, before this, voiced his desire to go into deliberative session. Can I call that a motion?
Yes.
Okay. How about we call that a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion or objection to doing that? No? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
What we're going to do now is go into deliberative session. You're free to stay here, and we're going to come back out on the record. We're just going to go and talk about what's been testified about so far.
Does the heater?
I counted.
I don't touch this place.
Yeah, I know.
I swear.
Okay, we're coming back 9:15, staying late with us and providing this application. Deliberative session, the elements on site review, impervious surface land. Your not touch on the site review. And the area that we did consider, the arcades with the surrounding rural use, and whether the impervious is appropriate, problems have merit, but not for areas of review. And the unanimous opinion of the board is that building will be appropriate if it's conditioned to be no outside storage, no increase in noise, and that the applicant approval from the fire safety. Okay.
No outside storage.
No increase. So I'll take that motion. Okay, made by Ms.
Specific, Ryan, so.
70
Yeah, so
line is-
limit.
So you can't go, if it wasn't clear but now that there can be no more of the shift there on that. I'm just gonna friendly that we make that a condition. That's simply a, you just have to accept.
Accept friendly amendments, yes.
You can always say no. And being said, favor? Tonight.
Let us know when the
Warned publicly, even complete, then it has the board, and where they can send it back. I think it's scheduled to go, am I right about that?
Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?